In this worksheet called Nested VLOOKUP, we've got a couple of tables in columns JK and also in columns M through U. And over in columns D, E, and F, we see a list of entries. First person here lives in Colorado, has 5 dependents, and we want to look up the tax rate for this particular person. And not all the pieces have yet fallen into place, but let's just do this manually for the moment. This person is in Colorado. Let's look in column J, and this tells us which region Colorado is in, MT, presumably mountain. Once we know which region this particular person lives in based on the state, we can then refer to column M. Here's mountain right here. This person has 5 dependents. We see that. And so the tax rate, here's the column for dependents right here, is this. How can we pull all this together? If you've worked with the if function, you no doubt know about nested ifs, if you've reached that stage perhaps. Same thing can happen with VLOOKUPs. And here I wouldn't say this is a goal, but sometimes you do need an efficient way to look up data in a multiple nested kind of way. Let's first figure out which region this state is in. It's a simple VLOOKUP with an exact match. We're looking up this value here, F2, comma. Typically, we highlight all the data in a table. For example, we could be highlighting from J2 over to K and all the way down to the bottom here, down to row 52. Nothing wrong with that. But take advantage of a nice shortcut in Excel. If there's nothing else in these columns below this, why not use JK? In other words, both columns together. The notation is easier to read. It's simpler. Falls into place nicely. Comma. Where's the answer from this table that we want? It's coming out of the second column. That's column K. So we put in a 2, not a K. And we want this to be an exact match, comma. We can type either false or 0. We're about to find out. Not the tax rate yet, but the region that Colorado is located in. That's MT for mountain. For the moment, think of just MT by itself. By using MT, we should be able to find information out of the table on the right, columns M through U. When we find MT, then we should be able to go over into this column to get answers. So think of this as being the value to look up inside of another VLOOKUP. This is the value we want to look up. So we precede this with VLOOKUP. And so this is the value to be looked up, comma, and where's the table we're looking up information in now? It's this table right here. In other words, we're trying to find the MT in that table, comma, and which column? Well, it's going to come out of the column that has a 5 in it in this first case. But which column is that? It's the 6th column. So this starts to get a little tricky. On a case-by-case basis, when you're doing any kind of a VLOOKUP, if you're trying to look up a column numerically, sometimes you have to do some reverse logic, think it out a little bit. If someone has 5 dependents, the answer is going to come out of the 6th column. If it's 2 dependents, it comes out of the 3rd column. So a little bit deductive logic here. The column that we need is 1 more than the number of dependents. So we'll put in E2 plus 1. So that tells us which column we need. And now, because we're trying to find MT exactly, that's what the first VLOOKUP gave us, we need an exact match, comma, 0, and a final right parentheses. Enter. And sure enough, that's the answer that we saw earlier. And again, checking back and forth, Colorado is MT. We look over here, MT. We look in the column that has 5 dependents. It's 0.3. There we see the answer. If we hope to copy this down the column, probably what we want to do here is make this be an absolute reference. But in the case here, we don't have to change that at all. So maybe a better approach here might be, instead of making this be M3 colon U9, what if we simply make that be columns M through U? Pressing enter here shouldn't change a thing. If we copy this down a few cells just to check it out, how about the person in Kansas who has 2 dependents? There's Kansas from the MW region. MW is right here. 2 dependents, 0.7. Actually, we're not seeing the whole display there, but that looks like it's correct. Column O here will increase that a bit. There we go, 0.72. We see that. So it is working properly. So we could copy this down the column. It's just an alternate way of displaying this without having to use the absolute reference. We're using entire columns here. But the key point here really is the nested VLOOKUP. The first VLOOKUP here tells us which region a particular state is in based on looking up information in columns J and K. And then we take that information and use it in the other table to the right to pull out the tax information. So these can get quite involved at times. And again, the saving grace many times is you know your data well enough to control it properly and you have a sense of what's going on. So nested VLOOKUPs, although not on everybody's radar, should be something that you're at least aware of. And it accentuates the idea that you've got a lot of creativity when it comes to nesting functions.